Hi, I'm Avery and this is another medieval combat video review. This time is the Pennsic Champions battle, and on the left we have Antonii. Doing my best to pronounce that. I might just call him Anton a couple times. Apologies in advance if that's the case. And on the right we have Wilhelm. Anton, though champion of the East, is from the Principality of the Mists in the West, if I'm not mistaken, and Wilhelm is from Ansteorra. So, in case you can't tell by the funny words, this is SCA combat. And the rules for this tournament are one solid blow to the body or head ends the fight, and a blow to the arm or leg disables that limb. They do allow thrusting with the tips of those weapons. It's a little unclear to me. There may be thrusting with the bottom of Wilhelm's weapon there as well. A little tough to say. And from the knees down and the wrists up are off-limits targets. So if they get hit, they don't count. They're invulnerable. So all that said, let's jump in and take a look at this fight. This one was sent in by request. So thank you for sending in that request. If there's other fights that you would like to see, please just let me know. And again, this is the Pennsic Champions battle. I think it's 2007 or 2008. Check the notes and it'll be in there. Alright, so as always, let's watch the first pass. We'll watch it at speed as I make a few early comments, and then we'll go back and break things down little at a time. Always nice to see friendly combatants. Right off the bat, they're both fighting with glaives, which are spears that can cut. In terms of the weapon construction, they're both a single solid piece of rattan, which is like wood. They both have thrusting tips. You can see that Antonii's is maybe, I'd say, 5.5, 6 feet long, whereas Wilhelm's is probably 6.5, maybe 7 feet long, so there's a range difference. You can also see that Wilhelm's is a lot thicker and sturdier, but heavier. Anton's is a little bit more flexible and whippy, but much lighter. There you can see the thrust early on is a pretty good threat. And moving early into cuts, and there we see the resolution of the first exchange. So that's a double kill. So let's take a look at how that works. In this case, it's a double kill, so they're going to refight, because it's the first person to lose. But let's see how that double kill goes down. So, right off the bat, the first thing, in my opinion, to notice, besides the stature, build of the fighters and their range, is their handedness. So it looks to me, though, what I would call Wilhelm is fighting in a right-handed form, and Antonii is fighting in a left-handed form. A lot of people fighting with spears will put their dominant hand at the back like they would while playing pool. But when you're fighting with a great weapon, whether it's a sword or you're swinging a baseball bat or a hockey stick, normally the dominant hand goes forward because that's the control hand. So although people often fighting with a pike or stabbing only weapon will put their strong hand at the back, normally I'd refer to handedness based on the front hand. So both of them have their chests facing the same direction. That means that they're crossed up, and a lot of the parries are a little bit different, right? So it's an offhanded fight. Next thing to notice, Antonii is doing a lot more footwork, and he's also moving the tip around. I'm going backwards here. You can see him circling the tip around. They're definitely in killing range of each other, but given their reflex speed, they're both likely to defeat any attack at this range. So you see Antonii is sort of moving the tip around a lot more, seeing if he can bait Wilhelm into coming offline. Wilhelm responding slightly with an engage, disengage, and also stepping, but less dramatic form. Also, some of that you'll see might come down to the weight. Antonii also doing that movement mostly with the first hand, right, the front hand. So if you take a look at the hand, granted he's on the move, you'll see that he's actually got his backhand relatively planted and his front hand is moving, as opposed to circling the backhand around and moving the front. Right, so not treating that front hand as a pivot point, but instead treating the backhand as a pivot point. And here, this is, if I'm Antonii, this is what I'm looking for. As soon as I see this foot plant, that's when I'm going to throw my thrust here. So here, you see him stop, plant, the line of tips crosses, that's where I'm going to throw a thrust. We can't really see what's happening at this point of the exchange, but Antonii steps back offline. The other thing I should point out about a thrust, if you haven't fought with a glaive or a stabbing weapon before, is when someone batters an attack aside, especially in this case, if you take a look at the front hand here, if Antonii does a thrust and Wilhelm parries across to this side, what it can do is actually knock the front hand off of the weapon as the weapon goes out of the hand. So you're basically knocking it against the fingers like a disarm. The backhand is strong on it, but that means that anytime you do a thrust that's easily defeated by battering across to the left, there's a chance of a disarm, or a one-handed disarm, I should say. Here, right away, we can see just as he steps down, this looks to me like he's going to plant back and go the other direction or thrust. That's actually a feint, so it doesn't come through, but it looks like it did get Wilhelm to bite. Here we see the foot plant again. That looks like a change of direction, perhaps with the thrust. Although this time, if you look, the hips are turned away, so it's a little bit of a difficult position to thrust from. And again, this whole time, Wilhelm maintaining pretty stable form, Antonii being a little bit more mobile and a little bit more fluid, though perhaps at times a little bit more out of position. So you can see if they were of equal speed, Wilhelm's thrust pretty quick and fast to the face. Antonii's thrust would have to angle down. So face thrust is usually a pretty good kill. Both these guys are really good at defending against thrusts, so they're not really going for them. Here, as soon as that tip comes up, it looks to me like it's going to be a cut or a drop thrust. Turns into a drop thrust. Disengage around to the inside. So if you just imagine staring at this here, Antonii's weapon is on the outside, circles around and down to the inside. And he's circling in for a thrust. Now at this point, that's super dangerous. So Wilhelm, and going backwards here, this comes, it looks like a cut down, big disengage around. This is a rapier move. Wilhelm, I believe, a rapier champion of Ansteorra, so he's sort of familiar with them, I think. And his defense right now, instead of parrying with the tip, he's going to have to parry with the area between his hands. Really dangerous, or get his head out of the way. So he just barely gets his head out of the way and does a countercut. Now that countercut, as we saw, not only knocks the weapon away, but to get the full extension on this, look at what Antonii is doing with his hands. He's actually letting go with his left hand, which not a lot of people are comfortable doing because they're not able to get their weapon, there he's let go, not able to get their weapon back in. Now that's battered away, it does give Antonii further reach. His backhand can now go further forward because his front hand isn't in the way. But look at the weapon gets knocked way far away, and Antonii is brought his front hand around to grab it. A lot of people are going to try to use, less experienced fighters are going to try to bring the glaive back forward with their backhand. That's not going to work. So he knows exactly where it is. He's trained himself to be able to recover his weapon like that. So he took a big risk letting go with that front hand, but he's got a really quick recovery, grabbing it. And you can see it's a little tough with gauntlets on. He's sort of missed, right? So here you can see he doesn't actually have it in his front hand, but he's cradling it, so he knows where it is. That's because gauntlets are sort of clunky. It's hard to feel them. He's trying to get his hand. There it is. Boom. Back in. Now, at this point, Wilhelm, going back again, if Wilhelm presses the attack here, he's actually at a pretty strong advantage, but he's already moving back. That gives Antonii time to recover. There's maybe time for Wilhelm to do a quick thrust here, but he doesn't because he's concerned about maybe a counter chop to the head. So that exchange passes. Again, we see a lot of circling. Antonii is doing the movement around the outside, and he's comfortable crossing his legs, you'll see here. So he's gotten used to being able to throw shots from out of range. The challenge here, from this position, he can't reach Wilhelm, and Wilhelm can reach him. So if I'm Wilhelm, this is the moment I start uncorking a couple face thrusts because of the way that Antonii's hips are pivoted. So Antonii's going to have to move his feet or his hips, or really let go with his left hand to be able to reach. There, he swapped his feet. Now he's at less of a range disadvantage. Still, he's got the shorter weapon, but he's not doubly at short range. So he's backing up. He's giving ground at this point. It looks like if I'm Wilhelm, it looks to me like Antonii wants to get in close. There's another disengage to the outside. He's doing those disengages with the front hand again. And here's a place, unlike boxing where you can corner someone against the ropes, notice that the ropes are the lovely ladies of the court. So Wilhelm's letting Antonii out from the corner. What he could do if he wanted to corner him is take footwork that way and cut Antonii off. If he does that, he's going to be pushing him into a crowd of people instead of ropes. So he sort of lets him out here. Now at this point, this looks like a perfect moment to thrust for me. Now it's a bit of a bait. Antony's pretty quick at whipping his weapon tip around in those circles, but I would be firing for that head, or I would do like a double thrust, like feint to the head, thrust the body, something like that. Just because he's on the move now, it makes it a tough target, and certainly he's baiting. The risk to that is a counter chop to this side of the head. But at that range on the move, with both feet in the air at times, right there, both feet in the air briefly, that's a good opportunity to thrust before he gets the opportunity to close in and attack with that chop. Here comes the thrust, and this is really neat. So Antony's basically setting this up. He's disengaging. I don't know if he's waiting for the right moment. Wilhelm doesn't give him much, but see, look at the weapon tip starts coming back, and that's when Antonii throws. So he's actually watching this weapon tip, and as this weapon tip goes to the right, there, Antonii throws before his back foot has touched the ground. So he's pushing off before his front foot touches the ground. So he's pushing off his back foot, thrusting in mid-air, going for the thrust there, and Wilhelm makes the parry. And you can see how tight that is. That almost touches Antonii's nose. So both of them really, really close there. Maybe a little bit of an incidental touch. Neither of them get hit real clean. Now Wilhelm is going on the counterattack, but Antonii's moving fast enough, he's actually circled around. So Wilhelm's going to have to reach around his own body to get a good thrust in. And you see now Antonii's in this position with the weapon up in the air. That means he's either doing another drop thrust or he's closing in to cut. Here we see threatening both, backing out. And the other thing I might be doing if I'm Wilhelm, with Antonii in this position, you could be thrusting for that pocket. That's nice because if you hit on that side of the body, it's really hard to slip. It can basically, a thrust to that part or here is more likely to catch inside an opponent's armpit or something like that. Anything to the outside is likely to skip off, right? The other thing you could be doing potentially, although with the weapon high in the air, you could be threatening a thrust here and then cut over the top into the leg. Because again, he's got that reach advantage. He's not using it much right now, though. But also recognize with that much heavier, much sturdier glaive, he might be much slower, it might be much harder to wield. So he knows that he's at a speed disadvantage. So here you see a really quick thrust coming again, totally opening up that front hand on Antonii's part, and a pretty good parry. The read is there, and it parries that out. Now in this position, if Wilhelm moves quickly enough, he can close in. Look, we've got one hand on the weapon, got 1 foot in the air, and crossed up. So if Wilhelm is able to pounce in, now's a good time. The challenge is to make that quick parry, he's had to yank his right hand across to the right towards the camera, and to make that happen, he's had to push this hand out a little bit and get his body into a position because he's desperately trying to keep his head alive in a position where he's pretty far bent over. From there, you can't pounce forward to counterattack. It's too slow. So here's a really neat conversion. Here's a strong right-hand parry, blowing the weapon towards the camera, and Antonii goes with it, right? So here you see him bringing his one hand forward to make recontact with the weapon, and now he's circling around and using the momentum of that parry that would blow the weapon out of his hands into a good position for attacking and defending. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is they've got pretty good sight lines on each other here, so Antonii is looking to use this portion of his weapon for parries. Wilhelm could be doing a very strong attack straight down into that position, or could be trying a pull and thrust there. What the real threat, in my opinion, would be if he had stepped this way and rotated his right hip clockwise to open his stance a little bit more. He could be threatening this side of Antonii's body. But instead comes right down. Now it's a good countercut, but remember that 1 inch from the wrist and up is invulnerable. Now Antonii means to parry with a weapon almost certainly. No one wants to get hit there. But that doesn't count as a blow because it's too close to the wrist. Now they're both crossed up. Here you'll see a lot of oar motions from both of them, right? The typical thing you want to do is what's called winding at this point. So you see Wilhelm looking to wind, and Antonii sort of, by repositioning his weapon, doesn't allow the butt of his spear, the butt of Wilhelm's spear to wind too much. So Wilhelm now has to reach pretty far forward, out from his body and up, which costs him a lot of leverage. Right? So what he wants to do is be using that backhand to sort of wrench Antonii's weapon around, but because Antonii has gotten up and under, he's actually pretty close to where his hands are. So he's actually got leverage control of his hands. So that doesn't quite work there. Here there's an opportunity to sort of cross-check, or if you see, sometimes folks have what's called a butt spike on their weapon. If there's a thrusting tip on the back of that weapon, you're as good as toast. Likewise here. This is why I don't think that they have butt spikes. Big chop here and chop here. So these guys at this point now recognize we both have the same openings. We're playing a mirror match. We're right-handed and left-handed. We're in the same position. Neither of us have any strong defense here. They both go for the same blow. Neither of them can get out of it with their bodies, so boom, double kill. All right. A lot of good fighting for the result of let's do it again. All right, so let's take a look at this next pass. I went way too far, sorry. So again, this is a refight, not really round 2. Move forward a little bit. I apologize for wasting your good time. Here we go. A lot of the same motion from Antonii. You're seeing the same thing from Wilhelm. Wilhelm now being baited into trying to whack Antonii's weapon tip a little bit more. And you can see Antonii trying to move back and forth to shorten that range, get in. Because he's got the shorter weapon. Near miss, good duck from Wilhelm. But that duck threw him off balance, so he couldn't counterattack. Potential thrust opportunities against Antonii as he moves his weapon from left to right. But Wilhelm doesn't want to bite on them. I think he's a little concerned about what happens if his weapon gets knocked loose and Antonii jumps in. Some good cuts and countercuts. And in this case, what happened was, it's a little hard to see from this angle. I looked at another video, but Wilhelm actually slips here. There. Now, in this case, although Antonii landed a good shot on him, and Wilhelm almost landed a thrust, because Wilhelm was falling over, they're going to refight it. So let's break down the combat that happened here. So again, this is going to be another refight. So same motions again. A lot of crossing up on Antonii's part. And that footwork is sort of a bait, as we know he's comfortable throwing with one foot on the ground, maybe even both feet in the air. And he's got the much quicker weapon, which I think has Wilhelm concerned. So Wilhelm's not really keeping Antonii honest with this. And here, actually at speed, one thing I'd like to call out that you can see at speed is Wilhelm getting baited into making parries that are heavy. They're heavy parries. This is at slow motion. Watch how hard he cuts to the right and how long it takes for him to get back there. But he's got really good reads. He's not getting baited often, and he almost lands a good thrust here. So there's a really good parry, and he makes that parry just as Antonii is throwing the shot out. Not a lot of good opportunity to counter, so he stops and tries to land a body thrust, but doesn't quite land it. There. Now, Antonii is able, the only reason, as I said, that hip pocket is a really good spot to hit people because it's going to get caught in there. So Antonii knows he can't get his weapon down to fully parry it, so he gets his good hand control. He's getting it close, but he's got to actually lift his leg and scrunch his body to try to get around that shot. Right? So look at how far he's displaced his body, because he knows from this position he's going to take a thrust to the hip. So he gets out of the way, and then the counter cut. Also, watch, he's actually done a crescent step with his foot, which is pretty cool. But he throws this shot, and he was in a pretty compromised position, so now when Wilhelm leans out of it, just grazes by. Pretty good recovery, too. I think a lot of people, if you watch the direction of this blow, he actually managed a pretty quick recovery. Instead of swinging past, he's able to pull some of the rotational momentum back. And that's actually sort of awkward here. I can almost feel it in my forearms. But he's able to bring it back and get the tip back online and make threats for cuts. Here, dramatic steps, offline. One of the challenges, though, Wilhelm recognizes, although going around the outside does give you an angle advantage, being in the center of a circle, as Antonii walks around the outside of the circle, Wilhelm doesn't need to do much to track that, right? And Wilhelm's not being baited to over-rotate. So here we see this really cool exchange come up, where Antonii starts coming in. So Wilhelm, I'm not sure what Wilhelm's doing with this right now. They're basically disengaging around each other. I think this is an attempted parry. Pulling up can be a good parry. You can see that it makes solid contact. Antonii now sees his opportunity. Wilhelm throws hard. That skips off the blade and the wrist. Antonii's now coming in with a counter chop. Wilhelm parries with the butt between his hands, and that also gives him a chance to counter strike. Antonii's got his guard back up. Now, from this position, it looks like we're going to see the first of a shot that we haven't seen yet, where the forearms are going to cross, and Antonii's weapon's going to end up like this. That doesn't actually happen here, but it looks like the threat. Here what we see is the first of a few times you're going to see him actually running in full bore. Now this right here, this is where there was the opportunity to kill. If this shot was just a little shorter, instead of aiming at the head, had gotten past. So basically, if he had shortened that range, if Wilhelm had managed to pull his hands back to here and here, that tip, instead of hitting right there, would have ended here, shorter, allowing for a thrust straight into the face. And Antonii would have had a hard time dealing with that. But he actually is just caught his tip on there. Now he's trying to recover and get back. Now his hand is sort of jammed up. Antonii's coming in with a lighter, faster, shorter weapon. Now Wilhelm's got his tip passed, and here's the biggest opportunity for risk. And it might be the slip that sort of saves Antonii here, because this is a pretty bad position if that thrust is going to land. So what Antonii's going to want to do is move offline or something, twist dramatically out of the way, because that thrust is going to be a killer. And here it comes, planted, and it misses. Why does it miss? There's no fancy footwork going on from Antonii. He's going pretty much straight in. That extra, we go back, you see that first bobble costs him. That could be the kill right there. Gets a second chance at it and misses. I think that miss happens because you can't really see it, but his back foot is slipping out, and that's why he falls down and gets whacked in the head. All right, it's time to finish this match. Pretty epic so far. Right away going in with the close, both with the double wind. Antonii gets his back feet back under him. Pretty good closing crosses in there. And there it is. With the sneaky face thrust he's been going for the last 3 times. So let's take a look at this exchange. I should say these couple quick exchanges that end the fight. All right, so right off the bat, one of the things that Antonii set up, and I didn't want to call this out in case you see it right off the bat, but look at where they are. First, Wilhelm sets up with his weapon offline, like he's going to do a leg chop or something. For him to be doing that, he's working with a stratagem, but look at how much closer they are than they were before. Neither of them has their tip online. Wilhelm feels it, brings his tip forward a bit, and then brings it more online, right? But look, they're already well within range, and Antonii is just going to do a clear, almost as if he's a swordsman trying to get past a weapon tip. Boom, right there, cleared. Weapon contact. He's leaned forward for it, and he's sort of clearing to the outside. It's an unusual position, but he's able to play sticky with it. And he's got a full, like, almost a fencer's balestra going forward, because he wants to get in and finish this fight. Now, that chop obviously is recovered quickly, and then you see Antonii go into the same defensive position that you see him use a number of times earlier in the fight. It's almost 90 degrees, protected by the hand, but you remember last time when it was dangerous, the glaive tip was like this. Now he's well inside the range, so much less threat from that tip. A lot of people might be thinking right now, why not in this position simply jack that hand forward and punch into the armpit? That would be a really, really good counter, if you were allowed to punch with gauntlets in the SCA. However, because it's not the kind of blow that would end the fight, again, it needs to be done with the weapon's blade or the striking surface of the weapon to end the fight, it would be considered pretty rude because it would hurt really bad to get punched in the armpit. You'd be like, ow. And since it wouldn't be a killing blow, although it might knock you back, it's sort of considered a jerk move. You're not supposed to be striking with things that aren't striking surfaces. So although there's a good opportunity, technically, to crank this arm forward, crank this arm back, rotate that hip, and punch up into the gut with sort of a cross-check motion, not really allowed in the SCA. So instead, what does he do? Same motion, but roll up and do that oar stroke, not oar stroke, but the sort of winding here. But notice Antonii has his hand is right down at the bottom, so there's not much to catch on his weapon to flip him by. Regardless, Wilhelm's still able to direct him right past, and let's look at a couple things about how he did that too. So Wilhelm's going straight back. Take a look at his footwork as we do this. Back, back, back. Step aside and rotate with the body. Toro. So pretty cool move. So he's in trouble, but that little tiny body shift, that front leg goes out a little bit to the outside, drop the hips and roll back. Even though he can't catch much and he's not allowed to hook it underneath Antonii too hard, he could technically sort of push him by the armpit, but doesn't want to punch him. Gets him right past. And here's where the only reason why this head doesn't go like boom out that way is because there's actually a huge defense right there and Wilhelm sees it. If he throws hard into that position, he's going to leave himself open. So he doesn't. And that's what he would have left himself open to, the counter chop. This time, again, probably too high to the wrist. You can see it lands right by the wrist, so it doesn't count. But what that does is also robs the power. Antonii's trying to bury it. Get around the corner, and also get my own head out of the way. Manages to get his head out of the way, but can't quite get the power through on the follow-through because, again, all the power comes here. Bang. By the time it gets there, there's very little left. So both of them actually survive, and you can see that back foot, Antonii's back foot, almost slipped, but he catches a little traction and driving forward. He doesn't want to give up momentum, so he's back in, but he should be thrusting right now, in my opinion. Tough to thrust when you've just recovered your footing. But the other thing is look at the position that his opponent in. He's over his back foot. So charge in. Now in this case, instead of thrusting, he's got his weapon tip high. This is the defense, right? So he's charging in with a strong defense. And again, recognize because they're left-handed and right-handed, there's a big opening on this side of the body for both of them. So they're both open on the side that's nearest the camera. It can be a little hard to tell from our position, but from them, it feels like a big opening on that side. So again, closing distance, almost at a run, looking like he's about to throw a shot, but instead what he's trying to do is close that gap. Again, now, instead of defending with this, he's now defending with this part of the weapon, and Wilhelm realizes he's got to throw. So he throws the first one of these shots, actually, and does it really good job. Steps, look at the position of his tip. Goes from all the way up at the top. Sorry, this is as far to the left as the camera goes. Cross hands and drop that shot low. The challenge is Antonii's read it. Look. And boom with the parry, almost 90 degrees, really good parry, and narrow margins. If Wilhelm was able to power past that, that would have been driven into the hip for a good kill, but wasn't quite able to, and now Antonii's in. They're crossed up. This is a place where a lot of people freeze. Neither of these guys freezing. Here's where it looks like maybe there is, in fact, a butt spike on Wilhelm's pike, perhaps. But the other thing is he's using his heavier weapon and his body momentum, his extra body weight to try to push Antonii back. Antonii actually just rolls with it and tries to land a blow in here anyway. Right, so he's getting pushed back, he's off balance, crunch down, find the angle, and actually manages to land a blow in here, but it's halved, unfortunately, for him. You can see that it's actually not the blade that lands, because Wilhelm has actually stopped moving backwards, he's moving forwards, and Wilhelm had to move his weapon out of the way to make that available. Wilhelm goes to throw. This one also not great. It's been pushing off haft on haft, right down, right by where the haft meets the head of the weapon, and you can see it doesn't land super clean. And also Antonii's like sliding backwards at the time. So neither of those blows really connecting and resetting. Okay, last little exchange of the fight. Here, Antonii, right, left, and right, and then there's the face thrust. And to get a face thrust kill, you know, it's lighter touch to the face, most kingdoms, I think, especially at Pennsic, so it doesn't take much. So look at the separation between Antonii's feet and his hands. So we'll look at his feet first. Left, right, 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 straight. So it goes left, right, 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 straight. Look at the hands. Right, left, in. So the hands are actually moving a little bit differently than the feet. So if you're tracking the body, it's a little tough to tell where that's going to go. And then he actually almost misses the shot because he's pulled it left, right, right, left, right too many times, but is able to get it back on tip. And even though that's a salé and it's kind of pointy and you can see it sort of slips off, you can see from other camera angles it sort of catches in there, and that's the end of the fight. So really cool match. Thank you very much for submitting it. This is one of the first tournament glaive matches, I think, that I've been able to break down. I'm not a tremendous glaive fighter myself, although I enjoy it. This is sort of neat. You don't always have to match weapon styles. Sometimes it's glaive versus sword and shield and that sort of thing. So this was a really cool match, and really enjoyed breaking it down. If you have any other recommended videos you would like for me to go through, just let me know. Also, feel free to send them my way. They don't have to be SCA combat videos. They don't have to be heavy combat videos. We'll look at just about anything, and I'll just do my best if it's a style that I'm not super familiar with. So thank you very much.